Today on Into the Crayon Box, we look at software. Now let's get started. Okay, now before we get started, let's clear something up. It's not about which program is better than the other. It's about which program you are most comfortable with using. No matter how cheap the program is or how expensive the program is, it all depends on how comfortable you are and how well you know the basic concepts that we're going to learn in this series. Alright, now let's dive in. Okay, the first tool we're going to look at is DaVinci Resolve Lite. Now the cool thing about DaVinci Resolve is not only is it dual platform, it's both Windows and Mac, but it's completely 100% free. That's right, you get this completely free. If you don't have a professional editor, you have a, not really professional, but let's call it semi-professional nonlinear editor right in here. To me, it's mostly useful to use this to conform your footage before you start grading. But for the most part, it's a very good, completely professional color grading suite. One of the coolest things is right here I have part of the red of his shirt selected, and I'll show you real quick what we can do with that. There's a little too much orange in there. I don't want to get the skin tones, but I can completely change anything that is that shade or these shades right in here of red to whatever color I choose. So there, I can change it to blue. Now obviously I can tweak it some more and do a lot more to make this cleaner and not affect his face at all. But you get the idea. It's a very powerful tool to have this curve in here. Another important thing is that we have all of our scopes right here. So you can see I have my waveform, but I also have my parade scope, my vector scope, and my histogram. We'll get into what all of these do and measure in a later episode. Now another important thing to note about DaVinci Resolve is that it is a node-based environment. So it's completely non-destructive, and I can move around different pieces of the grade. I can have an inside-outside mask. I can mix things together. It's really useful and completely non-destructive, and there's a lot of different ways you can work in this. That being said, let's go on to the next one. Okay, our second piece of software is Adobe SpeedGrade. With Adobe SpeedGrade, it's, as you can tell, a little cluttered, and in my opinion, that's because it really should be used with two monitors instead of just one. So you can have your footage up on a completely different monitor, you can see it in full resolution, and it just works so much better. But with that out of the way, it's really cool. It's a layer-based system, so my footage is here in blue, but the actual grade is on a completely different layer, so I can turn that on and off, and I can do pretty much anything I want in this layer completely non-destructively. Now, within this layer is another layer-based system. All of your grades are going to be created out of a whole bunch of separate layers. You can even make a mask and make a layer with a mask. And as you can see, I have a primary and a secondary. Just a whole bunch of different things you can do. And these are all the different kinds of layers that you can add on to more than just your primary and secondary. It's a really cool program. It has deep color technology, which is really cool. It's just a very powerful tool. You get very natural looking colors with it. I really like it. Only downsides are, again, it's a little cluttered with only one screen. It's really limited in what you can do. You can send directly from Premiere, which is really cool. I like that. But you can't import an XML. You can only import EDLs. And once you understand the difference between an EDL and an XML, it becomes quite clear. You lose a lot of what you had, you lose your transitions. You can't put any transitions in here. Working with a dissolve is a nightmare. There's just a whole bunch of things that I wish it had, but it just doesn't. But that being said, it does have its use, and it's a very powerful tool. All right, so let's move on to the next one. Okay, this next piece of software is not a suggestion. It's just to show you something really cool. This has unfortunately been discontinued, which is why I'm not suggesting it. But it's very near and dear to my heart. I love this program. This is Apple Color. It came in the old Final Cut Studio suite. As you can see, you have your parade scope, or your parade scope, your vector scope. I can show you just the red, just the green. You can show the overlay. I usually keep it on parade. You can zoom in to the vector scope, all that kind of stuff. However, one thing I want to show you, you have your histogram, that's nice, but what I want to show you is this. This is your 3D color space. Now, we're going to get into color space and why this is useful in the future, but as you can tell, this is showing you what colors you have in a three-dimensional view. So, all my brighter pixels are over here, all my darker pixels are down here, and then as I go around, you can see all my colors. So there's cyan over here, so you can see all the green and cyan in the shot that I have here, and then you can see his skin tones. It's really cool. You can see this kind of separation of the skin tones. This is a really useful tool, and sometimes honestly just cool to look at. And of course you have your primaries, secondaries. You have a bit of a node-based workflow here, which is very useful. You have your masks, your still store, and all that kind of stuff. But again, this has been discontinued. I still use it when I can. It does have those curves that I love so much, and in fact, in my opinion, these curves still, to this day, work better than the curves in DaVinci Resolve. But unfortunately, I don't get to use it anymore. So in future lessons, when we talk about a 3D color space, I will be referencing this program quite a bit. But unfortunately, this is the only program that I know so far that has a 3D color space that you can view like this. So with that said, let's go on to our last piece of software. So the last piece of software that we're going to look at is Autodesk Smoke, and this is by far my favorite. There are a lot of reasons for that, but one of the main reasons is that this is a complete, fully professional editing workspace. You have effects like your color warper that you can plug in right in the center, or right in the timeline rather, and I can move my black points, shift my hue. I can do pretty much anything I want right here on the timeline. But if I wanted, I actually have a full, complete color grading workspace right in here. And let me see if I can. Here we go, overlay UI. I can have it full screen while still having my UI right here. And one of the greatest things is if I take the midtones, it makes everything else go away so I can see exactly what I'm doing. This is just really cool. This is the most easily used workflow I have ever used for anything. One downside is this is a very expensive program. The version I have right now is a student version. So if you're a student, you can get it for free. You can get a free 3-year license. Other than that, as of earlier this year, this is a subscription-based piece of software. It's about $150 a month. So one of the cool things you can do with that is, of course, you have a trial version, get used to the trial version, use the trial version for as much learning as you want, and then when you need to use it for a project, just pay for 2 or 3 months at a time, roll that into what you're charging your client, and here you have it. So you have everything you might possibly want. You have master. You can go and select something like, let's pick the sky back here. So I'm only affecting the sky. So let's say I want to make the sky purple. and then go back to the master, everything is, exactly the same. Change all the shadows to blue maybe. That's still, you still have your purple correction. And then you can exit and you're back out in your timeline. Another great thing is I raved about the partial node-based workflow, but let's go into our Connect effects here, and you will be able to see that this is a full node-based workflow. So as you can see, this is the day for night conversion I just did on this piece of footage. I started with this piece of footage right here, and through a lot of finagling and just a lot of cool stuff, to be completely honest, a lot of hard work, I got it right here. This is what we call a day for night conversion. Usually I would just use my color tools for that, but because the sky was completely blown out, I decided it would be easier to just replace the sky. Usually in a day for night you want to avoid the sky, but that's for another tutorial. So as you can see, there's a lot you can do. It's a complete 16-bit floating point workflow. It's just really cool, and there's just nothing you can't do with this. But again, it's the most expensive. There's a reason it's my favorite. It's the same reason it's the most expensive. It is by far the best tool that I have right here. So hopefully by now you realize that it's not about which program is better. It's about which program is more comfortable for you to use. Once you find one or two programs that are the most comfortable for you to use, even if you get better programs, you'll probably still use the ones you're more comfortable with, and that's where you'll get the best results. Now, on the note of affordability, I'm going to be using DaVinci Resolve Lite because it's free and dual platform. While I, again, do use other programs, and quite a lot to be honest, DaVinci Resolve Lite is just the easiest because it will translate directly to more of my audience. I hope you learned something, and hope to see you next week.